Good afternoon. It's Wednesday, May 18th, 2022. It's John Gilkison here, Aero Stealth, and I wanted to do just a short video on our latest trip in our Chevrolet Bolt. This time we traveled to Tucson, Arizona and back, which was a 665-mile round trip, including driving around in Tucson some. I'm coming up on an anniversary here of the car ownership on May 29th. It'll be on May 29th. It'll be 1 year since we bought the car, and I'll have a data report on the car for a whole year at that juncture. But it just so happened that this third trip of mine fell in just before May 29th, so I wanted to do a separate report on it. So far my trips have showed an average of 126 miles per gallon, and this trip turned out to be the same, so it's an amazingly accurate performance in this car over a wide range of temperature regimes and so forth. And I think, and now that I think about it, there's a few reasons for it, but let's go over the trip first. I started out with 100% charge because I've kind of figured out some things about traveling. Number one, you want to start out with the maximum amount of charge you can, simply because it's cheaper to charge at home, and you want to get as far as you can and charge less on the road if possible. Now on long trips, of course, it ain't going to make much difference, but on a 300-mile trip, it's significant. And so what I did was I charged to 95% and took the data for the last driving cycle and put that in the Echo Motor Garage. And then I charged from 95% to 100% and just recorded the energy consumption, which turned out to be just a hair over 5 kilowatt hours. And so in the morning we left with 100% charge, and a better route planner. I've had to be a little more cautious about it. I decided that, because they don't really tell you much about charging once you get to your destination. So I put it in the parameters that I'm not only going to start out with 100% charge, but when I got to my destination, I wanted to have 30% state of charge. And that's because I don't want to be jammed up at my destination after a long day of travel, especially looking for another charge place and taking time to charge. And so it's a little bit more time efficient to just be doing a little bit of extra charging on the road, so you have a 30% state of charge when you get to where you're going. And that worked out for us. Our first stop from Radium Springs was New Mexico, was in Deming, New Mexico, where we just took another 5.175 kilowatt hours. Cost us $1.68. And then the real charging session came up at Lordsburg. And when we went to Lordsburg, we added 15.5, 8 kilowatt hours. And that cost $4.35. And when we got to Benson, I had some problems with the chargers there. The first set of chargers I stopped at, we got in the car and started charging, and it just got started and then it tripped off. It had an error. And I tried it again and it did the same thing. And I backed up to the next one and did it, and I got a bit of charge out of it, and then it tripped off. So it turned out I got 8 kilowatt hours out of it, and then I moved over to a charger which worked the whole time, and I got 27 kilowatt hours for $9.09. So I spent a total of $11.81 at Lordsburg. But I needed a good charge because this last charge on the road is the charge preliminary to getting to our destination, which of course is Tucson, and I needed to have 30% battery. So left. So I had to charge to a higher level, which was 80% or close to it. I don't recall the exact numbers. I didn't keep notes on all this. So we did. We got there, and we had a good state of charge when we got there, about 100 miles or so. And we did quite a bit of driving around that day, going to our motel room first, and then over to our friend's house, and then we went out to dinner with them, and then we hung out at their house that night to watch total solar eclipse, and then we went home, and it turned out that I had left a room key there and some other item, an eyepiece, and the next morning I had to go back over to their house before we ever got to charge up the car for the trip back home. I had to go back over their house again from our motel room and pick that stuff up. So the other thing was the weather. When we started out the trip in the morning, it must have been around in the 70s. But by the time we got to Tucson, it was 106 degrees. And I was concerned. And when we was doing the charging in Benson and Lordsburg, it was over 100 degrees. And I was concerned about the battery, whether the battery would trip us off and because it was overheating or whatever. And one of the things I did figure out, and it is a problem, I think, I can't really say for sure, but if you're sitting in the car and it's running and you got the air conditioner on and you're DC fast charging at the same time, you're losing 8, 9, 10 kilowatts maybe just to that state. So we went ahead and sucked it in and rolled all the windows down, and with the car off we sat there and charged, and we got charged a lot faster too. So I know I don't like it either. Now if it was only mildly warm out, you might be able to run the air conditioner and it wouldn't be that much of a load. But on the other hand, if it's mildly warm out, you don't need it. So if you can get by without an air conditioner, it might be a good idea. So anyway, we had to charge 29 kilowatt hours. We tried to charge all we could. We got it up to about 80% to get it on the road back home. And then let's see here. Well, I just don't have it written down here, but we successfully charged at Benson, and then we charged at Lordsburg and then Deming. In Lordsburg, we ate lunch, but we had to charge first and then go eat lunch. So we truncated the charge there. I think we only picked up 11.5 kilowatt hours because we knew we had enough to get to Deming. And we knew when we got to Deming, we were only 60 miles from home, and we only needed about 100 miles of range. Because again, it's more time efficient to just get home. I didn't even need 30% state of charge to get home. 10% would have been fine, but I wanted enough buffer so I could successfully make it to my garage. And once I got it parked in my garage, of course, I could spend the rest to that night charging, which is what I did. And so the trip summary here is that we traveled 665.8 miles. We used 177.449 kilowatt hours, and that would include the 5.14 kilowatt hours I used to get from 95 to 100% before I left, and it also includes the overnight charge when I got back home. Now, when I got back home, I set it up for delayed charging, and so that it would charge overnight during the coolest temps of that day. The day we got home, El Paso set a record of 101 degrees, And so what I've figured out now that the warm weather is here is just because I have solar power doesn't mean I need to charge during the hottest part of the day in order to harvest that energy. Besides the solar power I have, I only generate 4 kilowatts per hour on average during the peak of the day, and the car takes 7. And then I'm running the air conditioner in the house too. So, and also I think it's easier on the battery, and you have less cooling losses for the battery and stuff, trying to keep the battery cool if you charge during the coolest temperatures. So your efficiency goes up. In other words, you're using less electricity to charge your car. So that's what I did, and the charge stopped at 7 in the morning, and I went out and got the data. So overnight I took 60.84 kilowatt hours. So I only had 40 miles of range left when I got home. So my total cost for the whole trip was $47.10. Now here's another thing. It's, you know, I'm an Electrify America patron, and so my rate is 31 cents a kilowatt hour to charge my car. However, the more you can do at home before you leave, and the more charging you can do at home when you get back home, that's done at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, and that brings the overall average rate down. In my case, it brought it down to 26 cents a kilowatt hour on average for this trip. So that's good to know. The car averaged 3.752 miles per kilowatt hour, and it averaged 266.5 watt hours per mile. Now, a better route planner uses a higher figure for it, but it's pretty close to that. So I don't worry about that. So my net average for the whole trip was 126.44 miles per gallon equivalent. And that's not bad when you consider I was traveling in many cases on a 100-degree day. High 90s, low hundreds. And now maybe the air is a little bit less dense at that time, but you do have charging issues trying to charge a battery on a hot day like that, especially if you have to run cooling to keep the battery cool while you're charging. So, but fortunately, you know, I'm not charging from 10% up to 80% in one charging session on the highway when it's 100 degrees. I'm not doing that. So there is a logic to all of this, and I think a lot of people who drive gas cars get into this, and they imagine it's like a gas station. You go to a gas station, you got a quarter tank of gas or whatever in your car, and you say, oh, it's time to fill it up, and you go in and you fill a tank. You don't do that with electric cars when you are traveling, and you never even fill a tank at home. I figured out that difference between going from 95% to 100% using 5 kilowatt hours to do it comes out, that 5% is equivalent to a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. And I only got a 66 kilowatt hour battery pack. So I really think I ought to only charge from 90% on down, but I've been doing 95 for quite a while, and I'd have to go jump through a few hoops to get my data to average out correctly if I did that. I think the winds were pretty moderate. They probably were only 4 miles per hour. Sometimes I had a tailwind, so I think that maybe helped. So the luck was with me on this trip, and I won't let you go now. Third trip, average 126 miles per gallon in my Chevrolet Bolt. And some of them have been done in cold weather, some of them have been done in hot weather. So it's looking like a trend to me. Y'all take care now. See you on down the road. Happy trails. Bye-bye.